Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Let's go. Let's laugh. We are imperfect after all.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Imperfect Us podcast. I'm Leanne Camilleri.
And I'm Lisa Downs.
As co-hosts of the Imperfect Us podcast, we will share relatable stories that celebrate that we are perfectly imperfect humans leading perfectly imperfect lives.
We will be sharing these stories through open and honest conversations with our extraordinary guests. And together we'll discover practical and evidence-based strategies that will enable us to navigate the constant challenges and changes of everyday life. We are thrilled to share these conversations as we draw on the science of wellbeing and positive psychology, and we uncover the barriers that might hold us back from being our authentic selves and turn them into opportunities so that we can show up more consistently, doing what we really aspire to do and who we want to be.
We would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung and Kaurna people who are the traditional custodians of the beautiful lands on which this podcast is being recorded. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from other communities who are here with us today. So let's get started.
Yay! And recording.
It's a privilege to welcome today's guest, Dr. Suzy Green. Suzy is a clinical and coaching psychologist and founder and CEO of the Positivity Institute, a positively deviant organisation dedicated to the research and application of the science of optimal human functioning in organisations and schools. Suzy leads in the complementary fields of coaching psychology and positive psychology, having conducted a world-first study on evidence-based coaching as an applied positive psychology. Having published over 20 academic chapters and peer-reviewed journal articles, Suzy is also the co-editor of Positive Psychology Coaching in Practice, Positive Psychology Coaching in the Workplace, and the Positivity Prescription. Suzy is an honorary visiting professor at the University of East London and holds honorary academic positions at the Centre for Wellbeing Science at the University of Melbourne, the Black Dog Institute, and is an affiliate of the Institute for Wellbeing at Cambridge University. With a strong media profile on television, radio, and in print, Suzy is also a member of the Scientific Advisory Board for Coach Hub, a leading global coaching technology platform, and is an official ambassador for the Starlight Children's Foundation. So let's get started. Thanks so much for joining us today, Suzy. We are so grateful to have you with us. What I would like to ask firstly is, we'd love to hear about what led you to the wonderful work that you do.
Yeah, I think it's probably due to the imposter phenomena that may have led me to the wonderful work that I do. So thank you so much for having me here today, Leanne and Lisa, and congratulations on your podcast first and foremost. I think it's so relevant and so badly needed, and I think we'll dig into some of the reasons from my perspective why that's so. But what's led me to do the work that I do, I actually left school when I was 16. So no one in my family had gone to uni. There was no expectation of that to occur at the time. I actually went to a selective high school, which was a huge surprise when I remember they called out my name in primary school, and most of my friends went to the non-selective school. So I was really disappointed about that. And then I thought, well, why am I didn't think I was, smart or intelligent. And then they've actually done research on this now. I think it's called big fish, little pond syndrome. So when you put students into a selective environment, so I was surrounded by really, really smart kids, and which just confirmed my belief that I wasn't smart. So in the end, I left in year 10. I just wanted to get out of school by that point. And then I went back to uni when I was about 24. And that was thanks to my partner at the time, who did become my husband. We're divorced now. We have two wonderful children, but I do have him to thank in many ways, because he was the one that encouraged me to consider going back to university or going to university, and really, has put me on this incredible path, which I feel incredibly, privileged to have been on. So, but as you can imagine, with that sort of backstory, I've spent many, many years battling the imposter phenomena. So I've got personal experience as well as academic experience to talk to.
Well, you can feel very comfortable with us. And in actual fact, Suzy, we were talking about it just before you jumped in today. Leanne and I both share the same stories as you. So I left when I was in year 10 as well. And Leanne did the same. She left school when she was 14. But the journeys that we've had on the way have really shaped who we are to this day. Exactly. And even though we had a whole lot of those, imposter thoughts, that inner critic, and, why would you be doing that? You didn't even get to do that. We put ourselves through school, put ourselves through bachelor degrees, a master's. You can't get through that without having that sense of knowing that you can grow and develop. So we share that with you. So that's such a great story. And especially coming from you who, we rate you very highly up here. We probably have imposter thoughts about you. But, there is hope and pathways for learning and growing and continuing that. So it's a very, very good thought to start with, I think, which is great.
It is wonderful, and it's great to share that story. I think for many years I didn't, and it's actually only fairly recently that I've been sharing more that I have struggled with anxiety most of my life, which most people go, no, really? And I go, yes, really. But I didn't even really, and it's so bizarre as a clinician, I didn't really even diagnose it in myself, which is really strange, but it's only now with time that I look back and I think, oh my goodness. And now it just seems to have left the building. I think it's brain maturation, just life experience, and it's gone. So I'm just really happy to talk about it. Because again, I've had lots of clients too over the years that have said, "Oh, I'm not a university person," so these stories that, "Oh, I couldn't do that," So I think it's important that we share those stories.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting when you become more aware of it yourself that you're much more aware of it in others, and you realise that all of a sudden there's that common humanity that everybody has the same thinking at different times. Hey, Suzy, I'm just wondering whether you would be able to share, obviously, leaving school is one story, but have you got another story of an imposter thought that might have shown up for you, or perhaps some clients? And what did you learn from that situation about yourself or those other people?
Yeah, I think one of the other great stories is when I moved from clinical psych. So my doctorate's in clinical psych, but I did my research on coaching, which was quite innovative at that point in time, as a coaching as a mental health prevention intervention. And so I moved, as soon as I finished the doctorate, into exec coaching. So I had a colleague that supported me in that. And I think that's something I want to just a side angle here for a minute.
Definitely.
I really want to reiterate this today. There's absolutely things you can do at an individual level, and I will talk a lot to that. But I think the more we recognize that it is the environments and the people around us that support us, because there's definitely been people like Dr. Travis Kemp was, he was actually an examiner on my thesis at the time. And then when I finished the doctorate, he said, will you come work with me? And he ran a very successful exec coaching company across Australia. And I said to him, I've never done exec coaching. Like, I've treated executives clinically, but I've never done exec coaching. He goes, oh, you can do it. I'll supervise you. And in the end, he supervised me on organizational psychology, and I supervised him on clinical psych, which, as we now know, is extremely prevalent in the workplace. And but when I first started seeing senior executives, and I was really thrown in, Travis gave me like partners at PwC, KPMG, the federal police, right? So I was really thrown in the deep end. And my thoughts, or ants we call them, the automatic negative thoughts, were, what do I know about an organizational challenges? I don't have the language around KPIs, all the specific workplace language. And I did have Travis helping me, but what I came to realize fairly quickly was that most of the people coming weren't there around specific I guess, performance, that was around performance, but it was more to do with, I guess, the psychological challenges or underpinnings, but also very much around their relationships with people. So I did have those ants, and I think that's a great realization, that you can have the ants, that they can come along for the ride. But I was able to say, well, hang on a second, I do know about this, this, and this, and I think I might come at this slightly different from another exec coach, but the way that I come at it, I think, has got enormous value, which it turned out to be. So yes, I think that was a big challenge I had to do when I first moved into the workplace, and now having worked in workplaces for nearly 15, 17 years, so you learn as well over time.
Well, I think, as we go along, talking to different people, different experts such as yourself, one of the things that we find is that when we get those imposter thoughts, we get caught in what Lisa and I have termed an imposter storm, where we just sort of get stuck in that. We don't see the possibility, and we can forget the things that, the strengths and, foresight that we might have, because we get caught in that, I can't do that, or I can't do
exactly.
But when you see that, like being pushed, for want of a better word, I guess, into something that does feel uncomfortable, but actually saying, hey, I can do this. Exactly. What an amazing feeling that must have, felt for you to be able to accomplish that.
Absolutely. But I think, again, both stories, me going to university and the encouragement from my partner at the time, somebody seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself, and then same with Travis, really saying, oh my God, of course you can do that. I think that makes such a difference, doesn't it, when somebody is there supporting you and encouraging you to have a go at it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's your first thought, a vision that you didn't know, that awareness there, by someone reflecting it back at you is like, really? And then when you notice that, all of a sudden you might notice other things.
Yeah.
It's like that wonderful, reflected best self exercise.
Yes.
How powerful is that when you do that and get all that feedback?
Absolutely. Because, particularly in our culture, we haven't historically done that. We wait till people die and then we say all the good things about them, don't we? But look, we've used that exercise at our leadership coaching development program at Accenture for 4 years. We're on to our 5th year now, and when we first introduced it, there was a lot of cynicism around it, and is this a bit too American? And anyway, in the end, to cut a very long story short, there was this amazing, powerful story of someone that had had a health scare, and he just received his, the stories from family and friends prior to getting this diagnosis. And he then shared with the rest of the cohort going through the group just how powerful that was for him, and how it helped him go through the procedure that he had to go through. And so since then, everyone's now convinced just how powerful that exercise is. And I think again, from imposter phenomena, I think it's wonderful to have those different perspectives, how other people see us, given back to us, shone back to us.
Absolutely. Suzy, in your work, you talk about mental toughness, and we're very curious to learn more about this and how it might help when we have those imposter thoughts.
Yeah, well, look, I love the model, and it's a psychological construct called mental toughness. It's been around for quite a while now. I mean, there was some earlier research on it that came out of particularly sports, and I think you don't get through a game without someone making reference to somebody being mentally tough. But it also was quite prevalent and still is in the military. And I think, the recognition that people can be physically strong and fit, but it's actually the mental side of it that probably is the deciding factor for people that make it through special forces training and the Navy SEALs, for example. But when I came across it, what I really loved about it was, number one, that it, I guess first and foremost, that it could be developed. So now I, along with that recognition that I've got family history of anxiety. Bravery was in my bottom 5 when I first did the VIA character strengths. Surprise, surprise. And so I then realized I was probably about 40 something in my early 40s that I'd had enough of it, and I really wanted to learn to be a bit braver. And so I explicitly, consciously worked on that. And that's when I came across the mental toughness model. And the fellow that co-created it, Peter Clough, his name is, he's a sports psychologist. And so he was coming at it from a sports perspective, and he was looking at the development interventions like visualization techniques, mindset techniques, attentional control techniques. So there's a whole range of these techniques, which as a clinical psych, I'd used extensively for people suffering, particularly with anxiety disorders or phobias. So I was really familiar with the mental toughness development interventions from a clinical perspective. But he was saying, but this is what we use for elite athletes. So I had this amazing aha that, right, so unless you've, been in some ways very fortunate to have seen a psychologist for anxiety and have learnt some of these techniques, or if you're very fortunate to have had a great coach or a sports psychologist, you would have learnt these techniques. But the majority of people in our community, including children at school, have never learnt these basic skills of resilience and skills of well-being. We know resilience underpins well-being as well. So it's a core part of our approach. We have a model called RAW, which is resilience, achievement, and well-being. And our whole approach from resilience, which, as you would know, is defined as a multidimensional construct. There's a lot of debate about what it is, how to develop it. So mental toughness is a very discrete model that's made up of control, challenge, confidence, and commitment, the 4 C's. And then each of those have 2 subscales. So it's a very easy model to teach resilience, to help people unpack what a big, hairy topic like resilience is. But as I said, more importantly, it's got some great and very user-friendly interventions to develop mental toughness, resilience, bravery, if you like.
And these skills are so important, if where we do experience self-doubt or, confidence challenges, having this to draw on helps us to, helps to propel us forward.
Absolutely. And I started skiing very late in life. When I turned 50. So I didn't get to go last year, which was unfortunate because of the lockdown. But I started because I was quite anxious learning to ski. And I started to run the 4 C's through my head. So, for example, control is made up of life control and emotional control. So life control is I'm a master of my destiny, not a victim of circumstance. So I thought, well, this is your choice, Suzy. It's up to you how you want to come at this, and got real clarity around why I wanted to do it. I wanted to, learn a new skill. I wanted to enjoy time with my family who can ski. Emotional control has got a huge part to play when you're learning to ski, to manage your anxiety, particularly if it's a slippery, icy slope, the day that you're skiing. Confidence is made up of confidence in abilities and interpersonal confidence. So that's another great way to think about, well, I'm building my abilities generally, but my confidence in my abilities, but also my interpersonal confidence in being able to speak up when I was having lessons, to ask questions about, get feedback about my progress. Commitment is the 3rd C, and that's commitment to the goal or to my growth and my improvement. And then challenge. Now, this is where mental toughness differentiates slightly from resilience, because if you think about resilience, it's generally something happening to you and how you react or ideally respond. Whereas mental toughness, the challenge component is about proactively searching out challenging opportunities rather than waiting for them to come to us. So for me, I was, proactively wanting to learn to ski and be a better skier. And I think this is such a relevant model for imposter phenomena, when to help people understand, again, how whatever the particular scenario is that they're dealing with around the imposter phenomena, to help look at these 4 C's and where are the areas that they have strength, which is we always come at from a pos psych perspective, but where might be the areas that they want to develop a little bit as well.
And I guess
beautiful
as you grow with those, the 4 C's, the ability to do it again and again, just becomes stronger. And I actually saw you got your pilot's license.
Oh, no, I didn't.
Was that before or after or during?
I had one lesson. Let's the truth out the table. I had one lesson, and I did have a pilot sitting next to me, but I did, for small parts of that flight, fly that plane.
You still did it though, Suzy.
I know.
Still did it.
And I was so scared.
I was having a little giggle when you were starting to talk about the mental toughness, and before that you were talking about that you didn't have the bravery, but yet you were brave in every sense. So have you done your VIA character strengths lately? I'm curious to know where bravery might be now.
I think it has moved up, but it's still not right up the top. And I think, I'm not someone, if you're familiar with the strengths profile, which is another great strengths assessment, I don't have adventure. I don't have spotlight, which people would go, really? You don't have spotlight? I've learned to enjoy that now, particularly as my anxiety is reducing. But I'm not natural person that pushes myself out of my comfort zone, and that's why with the platform that I've been given, and I do feel like this is my calling, and actually part of my I guess reduction in anxiety is I had a great coaching session off the back of my strengths profile, because bravery was in weakness in strengths profile as well. But I had mission and legacy and growth and optimism all up in realized strengths. And so when the person coached me around presenting, I had this major shift in my mindset around this is not about bravery presenting. This is actually about you doing what you absolutely know that you're meant to be doing while you're on the planet. And so that was a big help in reducing my imposter phenomena as well at that point.
Such an important part of that journey, isn't it? Because how we see things definitely impacts how we experience them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think having the language of strengths has been so helpful to me, both the VIA. I also have Zest, so I bring a lot of energy to whatever I do. But I have love of learning, and I have curiosity, and I have creativity. So they've all been really helpful whenever I've had challenges to face. But I also find, so now I have a handful of senior executive coaching clients only, because I'm busy with many other things in the business, but nearly each one of those does have some aspect of imposter phenomena, and these are really very high performing, high functioning individuals. And I just find that the strengths profile in particular, or the Gallup, we use Gallup with Accenture, but I do find the strengths profile, because it's got that the weakness component, and it's got the unrealized strengths. It's so helpful. It gives people a language, and it also helps, as you were saying, Lisa, to reframe and look at themselves differently through the lens of strength.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was one of the, I've done the VIA for years and years, but when I did the strength, we had to do the Gallup and the strength profiler in my map, but the strength profiler really unlocked a lot of, oh my goodness, that's why I have that, and that's why I don't love that, and that. But that strength actually is a really good constellation for this one. So for me, like you said, with presenting, I think even when we were starting this podcast, I was like, oh, goodness me, I'm not sure if I could do that, but then I went, well, hang on a minute, but what is my purpose, and what do I really want to bring? And for me, it's that service to others, and, whatever that looks like. So like your legacy, I think legacy is one of my high ones too. So it definitely can help you to understand who you are and who you also want to be, which I think is really, really exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think what's really exciting for us, and why we really especially wanted to talk to you, we've got the positivity prescription program of yours with your 6M model, and it is just phenomenal. But when we were reading it and looking through it and chatting about a whole lot of things, we were thinking about your chapter 6 with mindset. So one of the key elements in the 6M model. And we're just wondering, because obviously, when we have those noisy clatters of that inner critic that's just wanting to just derail us, we know that there are some things that we can use, some strategies or tools And we just wondered whether you'd be able to share some of those with us today, because there's lots of them in your program, and I highly recommend this book to everyone and the program too. But have you got some sneaky peeks for us today?
Yeah, and I think, again, it was an interesting realization for me when I was doing my clinical psych training. So when I was doing it, showing my age, 20 years ago, CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy was pretty much it. That was the most evidence-based research, and I was really fortunate to have very, very good training in CBT. And what I discovered was when I came out of the masters, I'd have clients come along that would say, "Oh, I've done CBT and it doesn't work." And our lecturer, who used to head up the clinical program at Westmead Hospital, he said to us, always dig down a bit deeper on that, because you might find that the therapist hasn't really got to the core of what's going on, or hasn't approached it in the best possible way. So for me, when I learnt CBT, I learnt that in my early 20s through my partner, and then through doing my clinical training. It changed my life. It absolutely changed my life when I realized, firstly, that I had this running commentary of ants, the automatic negative thoughts. And then two, that I didn't have to buy into the stories, and that I could think differently. So, as we know, it sounds really simple, doesn't it? Just change your thinking. And in fact, one of my best recommended books is Change Your Thinking by Dr. Sarah Edelman, who's a colleague of mine. And I say to Sarah, if I had $1 for every time I've recommended your book, I'd be very, very wealthy woman. It's such a brilliant book, and it's a great book for non-clinical clients as well, executives. I've recommended it too. So CBT, I still think, is a fantastic foundational mindset techniques. So learning about these unhelpful, or at their worst, irrational thoughts, learning some questioning techniques, learning some potential disputation techniques. But I've also been fortunate to sort of have grown up with ACT as it's come through over the last 15 or so years as well. I think I went to one of the very first ACT workshops when it came out in Australia. I like to stay on top of what's the next new thing. I love the next new thing. That's part of my curiosity and love of learning. And so I was working quite a lot clinically. So I started to introduce some, more ACT-based approaches. And it really felt right for me and for my clients, because I did see that there were a number of clients that found CBT very difficult, and they'd get into fights with their ants, is how they would describe it with me. And so some of the, more gentler mindfulness-based of being the awareness, oh, that's interesting, not necessarily trying to get rid of it or dispute it. And I always use the Rumi poem of inviting in the uninvited guests. So invite them in, they can take a seat on the bus, but they're not driving the bus. So I started implementing a lot more ACT, and I still do today have a combination, of CBT and ACT-based approaches in my work. So yes, change your thinking. And the other one, clearly, Dr. Russ Harris's The Happiness Trap is my other big favorite for ACT. But there's lots of great online courses you can do, and it's not just for therapists or for coaches. Oh, and that is something to bear in mind. When it comes to coaching, in most cases, it's not that people don't have the skills or the capability. It is their thinking and their mindset. Hence why psychology is so crucial when it comes to coaching. So if you don't have, a psych background, then learning techniques like CBT or ACT, and many coaches jump on the NLP. And to be honest, there is research underpinning aspects of NLP, but it hasn't been as rigorously researched like CBT and ACT, for example. But this, as I said, there's certainly aspects of it that have been. But yeah, often you'll find people jump on that as a quick change methodology, but I would recommend that you do much greater investment in some of the newer, particularly ACT-based, which are cognitive in nature anyway. But yeah, I love some of the techniques in ACT people find helpful.
And ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, ACT is, very powerful, from a mindfulness perspective of, catching those thoughts, seeing that they're there, but not holding their hand and going off with them. And the better practice that we become with that, the better our experience is with life and managing our thoughts.
Yeah. And I think the combination with the values, which for me, this is why ACT resonated with me so early, because even pre-learning about ACT, we use values in coaching. So from my very first entry into coaching psychology at Sydney Uni back in 2001, we were introduced to values, and then being the basis for helping people set goals. And then, so I've been using values, for years, even before ACT really made them really prominent. But it's such a nice alignment, is the values, learning to sit with the discomfort, the unhelpful thoughts, but knowing that you're moving in a values congruent direction. So I think there's a lot of power in it.
Suzy, throughout our conversation, you've mentioned ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. Could you just sort of summarize what turning our ants into pets kind of means?
It's quite simplified, isn't it? And there's a lot more to it. If you've had ants that have been there for many years, then it's likely that you've got core beliefs that drive the ants, and you've got, or schemas is another way in clinical psych that we come at these underpinning core beliefs about who we are, about ourselves, others, and the world. But the ants, we all have ants. Everybody has ants from time to time. If you're in pain, you'll have ants. If you're stressed, you'll have ants. So they're automatic. So they're quite insidious. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're having them. They're negative, like they're absolutely irrational at their worst, which is, I used to say to many of my clients, if we took you into a courtroom, you'd be thrown out. What evidence have you got for this, thought? And I still do see, and I think, in ACT, there's less focus on this disputation, but I still see much benefit to disputing the really ridiculously irrational thoughts, particularly if you put them down on paper, because when they're in your head, you believe them to be true. But when they're down on paper and you can look at it and you go, that is so ridiculous. I can't believe it. I was thinking that. And maybe that's part of that cognitive diffusion that happens in ACT as well. But I think I'm not just coming at this from an academic perspective. And I think this is what makes the difference, because I've worked as a practitioner for 20 years, and not just in my clinical work and my coaching, but in numerous hundreds and hundreds of workshops. And I've just seen people have major ahas about the ants. And you know what, when you do, they say you retain less than 10% from training days. It's like 99% when it comes to ants. You ask people, what do you remember? Oh, the ants. Everybody remembers the ants, and it seems to resonate with them. And this idea that thoughts are not necessarily facts. So there's some really, in terms of building wellbeing literacy and psychological literacy and capability, I think they're a nice little entree into it. But as we both know, that for some people, and I've worked with people that have had long-standing core beliefs and schemas, which can take quite a bit of psychological work, therapy, to actually, unpack or understand that, and I guess develop new ways of seeing ourselves and being in the world.
We actually interviewed Dr. Craig Hassad, and he talked about the inner critic FM on all the time, and that could quite easily be ants, couldn't it? Like it's just we could call it the inner ant FM. Maybe it doesn't sound quite.
That's it. And look, the kids love it. It's a good one for kids. And in schools, POSED, we've worked with at Loreto Kirribilli, I remember in kindy or year one, they had a wall with all these ribbons hung against the wall, and the girls could write an ant on one side of the ribbon, and then the other girls would help do a reframe to that ant on the other side. So, I mean, imagine learning some of this at kindy. I didn't learn it till I was in my 20s. So, and some people don't learn it until much older. So.
No, that's right.
I've been working with 5 and 6-year-olds and our earlier students up to year 2 as well. And so we've been talking a lot about ants and the pets, and pets being the performance enhancing thoughts, and changing their mindsets. But they're doing so well, and they keep thinking, this is the mindfulness practice of, I used to call it the clouds that would come in and go. They just let them go. Oh my God, there's so many clouds today, far out. So we talked about, well, what happens when we see ants, and we showed them a clip of ants going and scurrying along and helping. And I said, so how many ants do you guys have? And they're like, I've got lots in my brain. And some would go, I've only got a couple today. Or they're having discussions about it so that they can understand each other. And then we turned it into pets. Well, how can we change that into a really kind pet? And that's so they created their own little, fluffy dog or cat or whatever, a lizard.
I love it.
And then start talking about, well, what would your pet say to you if that was happening? Is that true or not? And so forth. So the more visual you can make it for people, the more rewarding it is, and the more action and improvement, I think, comes out of that.
Yeah, it's so good for kids to learn these skills, isn't it?
Yeah. And the acronyms are just so simple and sweet.
Yeah.
That, like you said, if these kids are continuing with that learning all the way across, then when they hit that teenage, phase where things just get a bit messy, they've got things to hold on to and, to understand how their brain is working and where to next.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Suzy, besides your own fantastic work, is there a book or an app or TED Talk that you would recommend to our listeners today?
There's so many, but I have to say my favourite, and he's my newfound friend at the moment too, is Scott Barry Kaufman, aka SBK. And so Scott, for those that don't know about Scott, Dr. Scott Barry Kaufman, he was a PhD student of Marty Seligman. And I actually heard him present at a World Congress in Florida, Disney World. And I think Chick Sent Me High was on at the same time. And so everybody was at the Chick Sent Me High, and there was not many people at Scott's, but I love to go to these conferences and look for new, again, this is part of my curiosity and what's the new stuff that's happening. And Scott was doing stuff. He's done some incredible work on creativity and giftedness, I think, was some of his early work, but neurodiversity more recently. But he has a brilliant podcast called the Psychology Podcast by Scott Barry Kaufman, and he has the most amazing guests on that podcast. Some of them, just a bit of a warning, some of them are quite academic, so they're a bit technical, like and that's okay for people that have, I guess, got a background and have studied masters, for example, but yeah, he's really at the cutting edge, and he's really exploring areas that haven't gone mainstream, I think, too, which again is the stuff that I love. So I can highly recommend the Psychology Podcast and his book Transcend, which he went back and reread all of Abraham Maslow's books and journals, and then wrote this book and sort of built on some of Maslow's work around, which towards the end of Maslow's life, he was talking about moving from self-actualization to self-transcendence. So Scott's work is very much about self-actualization and self-transcendence at the moment. And he's also interested in looking at how we can use coaching to help people with that, which is hence my new interactions with Scott.
Yeah.
And coaching is so important. I love it. I do it with our kids, and I've supported our kids to coach each other. It's hilarious. It's so funny.
Oh, can I tell you, Lisa? Well, I've got a quick story that you will love. So my son is now 26, but when he was he would have been 10, and we moved to Sydney, and his previous school, I think he'd come second in the cross country. Then one year he actually won, but the teacher didn't realise and sent him around for another lap. He was actually first, and they couldn't give take the award off the child, so he came fourth. So he managed to still get around and come fourth. And then we moved to Sydney, and he came home and he goes, "Oh, Mum, I don't know about this year's cross country. I don't know if I can win." And I said, "Now, come on, Sid, you're having some ants, right?" I said, let's do a little bit of CBT, right? Let's do it. And of course, my kids have had, as yours probably have had everything, right? And so anyway, the story is he won the cross country this year, right? And I said to him, "So, Sid," I said, "it was the CBT, wasn't it?" And he goes, "No, Mum." He said, "It was the bowl of carbs I had for breakfast."
So quieten down, Mum.
That's funny. At all. So I don't know how
I think it might have been as well.
That is so beautiful.
Don't know how I got onto that story, but anyway.
It was needed to be had, that's for sure.
Yeah, very relevant story.
I don't want to leave, but I am going to ask you one more question, because I know that you're very, very busy, Suzy, and we are so grateful for your time. We've been asking all of our guests that are on to talk about maybe a self-care strategy that you use that you'd love to share with others, because we know that self-care, especially now, is really important, but a lot of people feel that it's just something very narrow. But there are so many different ways that we can have self-care for ourselves and also to pass on to others. Have you got a favourite?
There are so many, aren't there? And I guess I learned again probably in my 20s that, particularly when I had a baby. So I had a baby at 26, and and this is sort of a prelude to my self-care strategy here, if you like, or self-nurture strategy. I really realized I needed to implement a lot of strategies then, because I didn't feel like I could be the best mother that I could be at the time. And of course, it's good enough mothering or parenting, if you like, but I had a lot of ants about being a mum at the time as well. And so that's when my napping career commenced. So anyone that knows me well will know that if I get the opportunity for a 15, and I've trained myself now, so I don't need an alarm or anything, and unless I'm really, really exhausted, there's been a few times I have gone longer than 15 minutes. So my partner will say there's more than a few, Suzy, but yeah, generally napping is one of my most powerful self-care strategies that I have. And sometimes my day will revolve around a nap. Like I'll plan my day and I make sure that particularly if it's a really busy day, that I've got 15-minute nap. So because then it just gives me the energy for the rest of the day. And I'm an early bird, so I'm normally up at 5 or 5:30 most weekday mornings. And there is research, as you would know, that research says that you don't want to go longer than generally 15 or 20 minutes, because you go into a deeper sleep cycle and then you don't wake up as refreshed. And a neuroscientist colleague of mine has been talking for a while now about this idea of a caffeine nap, of having a coffee just prior to your nap, and so the caffeine kicks in and wakes you up. But I don't drink caffeine anymore. That's another self-care strategy I've adopted. I have one coffee a week on a Saturday now, and that's significantly reduced my anxiety as well by reducing caffeine. So naps, absolutely.
Use that as a strategy, like a performance strategy, don't they? In I think it's Google, LinkedIn,
yes.
Those organizations. I think they've actually set up areas.
Pods,
that's right.
Napping pods, absolutely.
Yeah. The closest I can get to it is when I just have I call it my mindfulness moment, so that I have 5 minutes where I just breathe. I don't go to sleep, but that's the closest I can get to my little nap.
Well, I believe that some research, can't quote it precisely, that, a good meditation like that, or even a brief meditation, can be more energizing than a sleep or a nap.
Yeah.
So,
and
I also have regular mindfulness meditation every day as well. So, yeah.
Suzy, we're so, so grateful for the time that you've spent with us this morning. Thank you so much. If people want to reach out to you or find you, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, look, the website, we've just been in the process of updating that. So the website, the Positivity Institute, but I'm also pretty prevalent on social media. I love Insta. That's my favorite platform. You'll see much more of my personal stuff on Insta. And then, LinkedIn is more my professional. But please feel free to connect and if I can help or connect you to anyone that can help, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, and we'll be sure to share all of those details in the show notes. So thank you so much.
Yeah, and Suzy, thank you for all the wonderful work that you do. Like, it really has trickled into so many different areas. So the impact that you're having on, all the humans who are listening to you and reading about you and whatnot, you are just doing phenomenal work. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts, that's for sure.
Oh, what beautiful. And yes, I look forward to chatting again soon.
Fantastic.
Thank you. What a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, she's an incredible woman. And I think what I love about her the most is how authentic she is. She is real. She is, even though she wears so many amazing hats, and we have a giggle that we have imposter syndrome about her. She is just so genuine, and I feel so comfortable with her, and the way she approaches all the strategies, whether it's clinical science or coaching, she's able to make sense for people, no matter who you are, and that is such a gift.
Oh, absolutely,
incredible gift.
And just everything that we touched on, when I think about, how imposter syndrome shows up, for people and my own journey, just thinking about mental toughness and how that approach, those 4 C's can help us to navigate that, the challenges that we might experience, or overcome the things that might hold us back. Very powerful stuff.
And it reminded me a little bit when she was talking about the mental toughness and the strategies about that stop technique in mindfulness, where, and I know in her book, The Positivity Prescription, she actually talks about this strategy where you are stopping and observing those things before you're going ahead and knowing, well, where do you want to go to next? And I think they're the messages that I got out of that as well, is that when those ants, so those automatic negative thoughts pop up, we can listen to them if we want to, but we also listen to them with a bit more intent. And then what do we do with them? Yeah. We then can change them, and that's where the pets come in. So the performance enhancing thoughts, change them to that. And then her lovely little strategies in that, the mental toughness, the 4 C's, is that we can actually have a go and start thinking about, where can I get the confidence? What can I control? Where is the commitment? And is there a challenge for me to extend and challenge moving forward and really keep improving? And what stood out for me was that love of learning for her, is that she was always trying to, like right throughout her life, that it doesn't matter when we have these ants, if we have a love of learning and we really try and what can we learn from this situation? We have an opportunity to either follow that, or is it actually something that's going to help us or hinder us? And if it's something we need to move on, then move on.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like holding its hand, when that automatic negative thought arrives, that little ant arrives, well, I can choose to hold its hand and go down that burrow with it. Or I can choose not to and just observe what's going on, understanding, like when we see it from that perspective of how the thought is playing out in the moment, it's powerful. It reduces the power of that ant because we're aware
down.
We're quietening it down, we're awake to it, and very powerful.
And it just reminds me of, that FM radio with the inner critic FM, where we want to dial it down. And they talk about that when we give too much energy to that inner critic, or we get angry with it, that it actually makes it louder. And so the importance of just observing it, understanding where it's coming from, and then starting to get that evidence that she talks about, which is that cognitive behavior therapy. Is the evidence actually telling us that it is true or not? And even the process of writing it down being a stronger strategy to go, oh my goodness, that's so not true. Where if it's in our head all the time, then it can sometimes stay there.
There's so much evidence behind journaling as being something that can help us with our building resilience, etc. But I really identified with, how those ants or those automatic negative thoughts can really play a part in that in the background of our mind, just chattering away, chatter, and we can listen to it. But I think if we sort of sit and actually write it down, that's where we start to see, like, oh my goodness, like
how ridiculous.
What a ridiculous thought. But we don't, I guess with it just playing in the background, it's just simmering away and we're not fully awake to it. But when we write it down, we're waking up.
Yeah, and a little bit like what you mentioned, which we know from Elizabeth Gilbert's book as well, is that let them come along with the ride. We need them there for safety. That is the inner critic is there for a purpose.
Yes.
But what purpose we want them for is another story. Yeah. So do they derail us? Or are they helping us or hindering us? And that's that real process. So you can come along on the journey with us in the bus or in the car, wherever it is, but we are in control of what we want for ourselves. So we can choose to follow something that's probably not true, or we can challenge that and go, oh, no, I'm all good. Thanks very much. Pop your seatbelt back on, quieten in the back seat again. and just remind ourselves that we have got some control over that, and do we can control our emotional stuff, and we have a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Our thoughts are not facts, and here we have a lot of resources that we can draw on to prove that.
Yeah. And I have to say, I suppose that for the final sort of thing for me is the coaching. The coaching is such a wonderful piece. And if you've never had any coaching before, it's such a great tool to have. And it just guides you through in such a amplifying way, I think. It gives you a lot of confidence and also a bit more awareness of maybe your pathways forward, and having that plan to be able to do it.
Absolutely. And that's, with that coaching, that gives us the ability to draw on our inner coach as well.
Definitely. And I think it then becomes part of your natural process. When you have those automatic negative thoughts, you can go through that inner coaching process for yourself and get yourself out of it, rather than sitting in that struggle for too long, which, struggle is great, but we don't want to sit in that discomfort for too long. Yeah. Oh. Well, Leanne, another great guest, and Suzy Green just had so many awesome resources for us too. So we'll make sure they're in the show notes.
Yeah, woohoo.
Well, bye for now, everyone.
Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Imperfect Us podcast. As always, we are extremely grateful for our executive producer, Brenton Ainsworth, for helping us to put this episode together, and the incredible music throughout the show.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you care about. And we would be grateful if you could rate this podcast on iTunes. If you know someone who has a great story to share about how to live with imposter thoughts, then please get in touch with us. To find out more about Leanne and Lisa, we welcome you to connect with us on LinkedIn and our socials. Bye for now.
Bye for now.